So some of you might remember my video on vinyl grails that I had acquired. But this time, I'm going to turn it around a bit and tell you about the vinyl grails I don't have, but want really badly. So stick around for my wish list of amazing classic metal and rock albums that I'll one day have, or go broke trying to get. So definitely, stay tuned. A couple items to mention before I get to these albums. The first is that I actually did have a lot of these on vinyl back in the 1980s, but as some of you know the story, when I was a teenager back in 1987, my family had tossed my record collection, 300 plus metal albums in total. It might have been close to 400, and I've basically been trying to get those back for the last 30 years. That's why my main show has the word reacquisition in it, in case you've ever wondered about that. Also, my desired Grail list is going to be a bit realistic, largely realistic, I should say. No Soundhouse tapes, no Def Leppard EP, no Diamond Head White album, so just so you know that. But there are one or two albums in this list that are kind of hard to get, so I'm breaking that rule a little bit. So with all of that, let's get to the records. First up is Angel Witch with their self-titled debut album back in 1980. Angel Witch, of course, was a band in the new wave of British heavy metal scene. This album is very much a key album in that regard. In fact, I would tell you, if I only had to hear one Angel Witch album ever, it's this one, because it's really that good. It was released on Bronze Records, which was also the label Motorhead was on. Girl School was on that label as well. It's been reissued a bunch of times, but I do really want the original. Also, if you've never heard Angel Witch, you should check out the music video for the title track. It'll give you a great sense what the band's about, and probably their best era, in my opinion. So there you go. The song Angel Witch by Angel Witch on the album Angel Witch. Next up is the first full-length LP from Celtic Frost, following a couple of really great EPs, including Morbid Tales and The Emperor's Return. In fact, I had all the Celtic Frost up to a point back in the 1980s when I was a teenager, up until Cold Lake. I'm sure a few of you know about Cold Lake. It's not the greatest Celtic Frost album ever. Unless you have a different genre preference, maybe you really dug that album. Let me know in the comments either way. Lots of great tracks on this album: The Usurper, Jewel Throne, Circle of the Tyrants, amazing song. Incidentally, if you've never heard Obituary cover that song, you should. Go seek that out for sure. Anyways, Celtic Frost to Megatherion. Of course, I couldn't leave The Mighty Death off of this list. This is their debut album, Scream Bloody Gore. Amazing album featuring Chuck Schuldiner, amazing guitar player who left us way too soon. A lot of great cuts on this album. I love Zombie Ritual a lot. I love Evil Dead. This is my introduction to Death when it came out, when it was brand new. I got hooked on them ever since. Definitely want this on vinyl. There is a 2016 reissue out there. I think it's on red vinyl. I don't know if it has a gatefold. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. And I might get that, but I really do want an original, of course. Next up is Forbidden with their second album entitled Twisted into Form. It's a great Forbidden album. This isn't the one I came in on them with. I did hear Forbidden Evil first when it was new, but this album is really a step up from that album. I think in a lot of ways the musicianship and the songwriting I think are really much improved, and it's a great album. I never had it on vinyl. This is during the CD era for me, so I was buying a lot of discs instead of vinyl. So I definitely would like to get this on vinyl for sure. All right, let's talk about an earache band. This is Godflesh with Street Cleaner, an amazing industrial metal album. This is my introduction to industrial metal, and I love a lot of earache bands, but this one was really interesting and pretty different from all the others, so I was definitely latching onto them pretty quickly. Like Rats, classic song from this album. I believe it was one of the singles, if not the single. There are reissues. I definitely want the vinyl, of course. Had the CD. Typical story. So there you go. Godflesh, Street Cleaner. Next up is King Diamond with Fatal Portrait. This was his debut solo project album. Before that, of course, he did Merciful Fate. And during it, he's done Merciful Fate as well. As we know, that band kind of reformed later in the 90s and all of that. This is my introduction to King Diamond, obviously. I bought it back when it was new, and it's a great album, full of great tracks. Halloween, amazing song. In fact, I did own the Halloween picture disc single back then, one of the many albums that got tossed. Man, I'd love to have that back. But anyways, There are some recent colored vinyl reissues from Metal Blade Records that are out there of most of the King Diamond early stuff, all the way up until Abigail Live. I might get some of those because they aren't remastered. They're repressed from the original tapes, so they should sound like the original records. If you're into that, obviously there are a few audio files out there. There should be, anyways. So I might get one of those or two of those. I don't know. I want the originals. That's going to be the thing you're going to hear over and over again. But anyways, there you go. King Diamond, Fatal Portrait. So I'm not sure if I showed it in a previous video, but I have the precursor to this record. That's the originals. This is the originals 2. The originals, of course, if you're a big Kiss fan, you would know that it has the first 3 albums in it. Kiss, Hotter Than Hell, and Dressed to Kill. Originals 2 follows that same pattern with the next 3 studio albums as Destroyer, Rock and Roll Over, and Love Gun. It's Japanese only, which made it really hard to get back in the 80s and so on. But with the advent of eBay and Discogs, it's easier to get, but if you want a copy in near mint condition, you're going to pay a pretty penny for it for sure. But I still want it, of course. So there you go. Kiss, the originals 2. You know, it's funny, for a band that put out so very little material, this is still a death metal classic, this album here. This is Massacre with From Beyond. This is their debut album. They had an EP after this called Inhuman Condition, but very little else after that. Amazing album, 3/4 of the classic death lineup, minus Chuck Schuldiner, of course. Cam Lee on vocals, his amazing death metal sort of growl vocals, which were very influential on a whole lot of death metal singers out there. They know who they are. The album comes originally with a bonus 7-inch single, I think it's single-sided, for the song Provoked a Cursor. Great stuff. My favorite track of this album is Defeat Remains. When I did college radio in the early 90s, I played the crap out of this album, but I especially played that song. Amazing stuff. Definitely still a death metal classic. If you're looking for a near mint copy of this album, I looked recently on Discogs. It's going for $125 without shipping. So you're going to pay quite a bit for it. But there you go. Anyways, I have it on CD, don't have it on vinyl. There's the story. Next up is Merciful Fate with Don't Break the Oath. This is their second full-length LP, following Melissa. This is the album I came in on with Merciful Fate back in, I think it was 1984 when I found the album. I bought Melissa very quickly after that. Amazing album. If you don't know Merciful Fate, what's wrong with you? Going to Melissa for a little bit, I did rebuy that album last year. It was in near mint shape, paid a lot of money for it. Well worth it though. Love Merciful Fate. I think a lot of people who are into Merciful Fate really love them dearly, like I do. As for Don't Break the Oath, it's out there. It's expensive too in near mint, but I'll probably get it. I have to complete that classic collection. But also, Don't Break the Oath is probably my favorite Merciful Fate album. Neck and neck with Melissa sometimes, but Don't Break the Oath tends to win. Have to have it. Anyways, there you go. Merciful Fate, Don't Break the Oath. The sad fact about this next album is that I never had the Megaforce version. A buddy of mine had it. I think he used to hold it over us a lot, my friends and I. I did have the Elektra version of Ride the Lightning back in the day, but I really do want that original Megaforce version. I did break down recently and buy the 2016 reissue from Blackened Recordings, just because I wanted to have it, and there was this huge hole in my Metallica collection, so I had to fill it, had to do it, but I'm still wanting that original as well. I'm gonna get it. It's an amazing album. I have a whole story about how I first heard that album, how I discovered that album through a friend of mine. I'm going to tell that in another video. It's a pretty good story, but there you go. A little teaser for you there. Why not? Next up is Morbid Angel with Blessed Are the Sick. This is their second album. Came out on Earache Records, another Earache band. One of the few American bands on Earache, if I remember correctly. Most of the bands were UK bands. Obviously, it's a UK label. I can't remember whether I paid for this CD or I got it as being a metal director for a college radio station in the early 90s. I've told that story a little bit before about being a metal director. You get a lot of free stuff, but also, the station I worked at in the beginning, when I first became metal director, didn't have a lot of metal. So I called up a bunch of labels. I called Century Media, I called Nuclear Blast, I called Roadrunner, all of those guys, Combat. And I did call Earache. I didn't talk to Digby, but I talked to someone else, and I'm like, give us some metal. We have none in the station. So they sent a crap ton of bands. These are all early 90s bands, a lot of the bands a lot of people like from that era. So there were some extras in there, I remember as well. I did give some away doing contests on air, but I did keep a few, and I'm pretty sure this was one of them. So there's my long-winded story about how I probably got this album, at least on CD. Never had it on vinyl. Would like to get it on vinyl, of course. In addition to Blessed of the Sick, I definitely think that Altars of Madness, their previous album, is pretty great. Chapel of Ghouls is, of course, the classic off that album. After Covenant, which is their third album, they kind of lose me, but those 3 albums are pretty fantastic. And if you're looking for a near-mint copy of Blessed of the Sick on Discogs, $125 is the starting price for near-mint. Crazy. But it's a great album, so I get it. Next up is the debut album from Motley Crue entitled Too Fast for Love. I'm specifically looking for the Leather Records edition. Obviously, that was the original self-released version. Later, when they got signed to Elektra, the album got reissued, but there was also a different mix on the Elektra version. So I want to hear that Leather Records version. If I can't get the Leather Records release itself, there is a Canadian Elektra release that came out at the time that has the Leather Records mix on it for some odd reason. So I will get that if I have to, but I would like to get the Leather Records one. Of course, I know the Leather Records version is insanely expensive and good shape, but, you know, dare to dream, I guess. And of course, we got to talk about Violence. This is their 1988 debut album entitled Eternal Nightmare, covered by Ed Repka, of course. Amazing album, a thrash classic. Kind of came out of nowhere when it came out. Love this album dearly. Never had it on vinyl, have it on CD, blah, blah, blah. Of course, they have a ton of favorites on this album. Phobophobia, the title track, Calling in the Coroner, Serial Killer. My God, the album's amazing. Full of great tracks. And of course, if you're wanting a near-mint copy of this on Discogs, get ready to pay at least $166 plus shipping. Yikes. So anyways, Violence, Eternal Nightmare. Great album. And those are the hard and heavy vinyl grails I really, really, really want. But what's your list like? Definitely let me see your Grail wish list in the comments below. Let me know if some of the ones I named are some of the ones you want. And if you have some of the ones I've named, maybe you want to sell a few of them. Maybe for cheap, maybe they're in good condition. Maybe. Other than that, like, subscribe, share. Also follow us on social media. We have tons of accounts, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Reddit, Spotify, a whole bunch of places. Just do searches at those services for the Accusation Network. You'll definitely find us. And of course, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.